beautiful souls. Wishing you the most joyous and magical new year. So, I hope you had a very peaceful and positive beginning to this new year. And it's perfectly okay if it's not, because uh, as I believe, life is not like a novel with neat endings and beginnings. It has its own um, stream of consciousness with its own rhythm and rhyme. So it's okay if you are still feeling the energies of the last year or the past, and if you are still trying to release some of the old energies. And uh, yeah, it's all okay. So we just need to welcome all of that, embrace whatever that life brings us with as much compassion as we can hold in our hearts right here, right now. Okay, so welcome back to my channel, Breathe and Balance, where we speak of everything mystical, magical, and metaphysical to bring back balance to all aspects of our lives. And this year, my intention is to bring even more magic and help you discover your own magic. Right. So, thank you for joining me on this journey. I really, really, really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to what the divine brings us this year, and all the lessons and the magic um, that we will be able to experience, as we expand our consciousness together. Right. So, today I want to start the new year by talking about alchemical conversation. So, this is a term that I coined a few years back, as I was having these very interesting, intriguing, and transformational um, conversations as a part of a therapeutic process, as well as outside with some of my friends and colleagues. I realized the very significant and sometimes very deep impact that some of these conversations would have on my life and in shifting my inner reality. Right. So it happened in a very natural, progressive manner. And we uh, have conversations all the time. Right? Life is full of conversations. But what I'm interested in talking about and sharing with you is what makes a conversation alchemical. Right. So let's talk about what alchemy is all about in the first place, for those of you who are not aware of the term. So, alchemy is a process that was used in the ancient mystical and philosophical traditions to turn base metals or lead into gold or even elixir, right, or nectar of life, using a particular spiritual and metaphysical process. So that's where it originated from. But of course, now it's used in many different fields, in many different ways. But in essence, what it's alluding to is a transformational process. It's about transmuting a particular energy and transforming it into something else, right? So this can even be likened to turning our pain into our power and our purpose, right? So energy is something that keeps transforming, it never ends, right? So uh, alchemy is this very mystical process of transmutation, I would say, and as humans, or actually everything in life, everything in this universe keeps transforming, right? Whether we are conscious of it or not. But here, what I'm referring to is a very intentional process of alchemizing, and specifically through conversation or communication using words or human language, right? So, uh, as I mentioned, we have conversations all the time, but is every conversation alchemical? Does every conversation result in a particular transmutational or a transformational process that creates wisdom or insight and illumination, expansion, evolution? So that's a question that I posed myself. And I think, I mean, this is according to my perspective. Yes, to a certain extent, I think every conversation may at least have the potential of being all of that, transformational. However, I don't think every conversation would actually bring us that experience of true inner transformation, right? I mean, there can be so many different conversations. I mean, for example, gossip, let's say, or bantering, light bantering. It may serve a purpose, of course. I feel that everything in this universe and our lives has a particular purpose. But in the context of what I'm really talking about, which is alchemical conversations, specifically those that help us heal. So it has a very healing effect in the way that I'm presenting it, right? So not every conversation is healing. um, Although, of course, once again, I think it's a perspective also, because even if a conversation, let's say, creates conflict, it's through conflict that we can experience a harmony and peace. But if we know how to so alchemize that process itself, right? So it takes some, I suppose, some knowledge and wisdom to be able to do that. But having said all that, um, you know, when we have a conversation now, let me refer to just a conversation between, let's say, two people, because conversations can have obviously among multiple people. But in essence, if we take a conversation, an exchange of words between two people, it's not really only an exchange of words on human language. There's a lot happening underneath it or behind the scene in terms of energy. So it's actually an energy exchange. So why do I say that? So how does a conversation start, right? How is it being initiated? So we need thoughts that gets converted into words, and then we make a choice to communicate or share it with another person, right? So thoughts are energy, right? Everything is energy. So obviously thoughts are also energy. And thoughts give birth to emotion. So energy in motion, right? And emotion is also energy. It's a frequency, right? And when we speak, we imbue our words with the energy of our thoughts, intentions, and emotions, right? And as I always say, words carry frequency, right? So it carries the frequency of whatever our intentions, thoughts, and emotions are. And of course, it carries the frequency of everything that we embody, including our wisdom, our love, and so much more, right? So never regard words just as, words, but a field of energy that carries frequency. So that is why it becomes then an exchange of energy between two people, right? And there's so much that happens, outside of the the space that uh, we can directly observe with the five senses or perceive with the five senses, because we are multidimensional beings, right? So as we speak, uh, so much more energetic dimensions, energetic dynamics take place metaphysically, multidimensionally, right? Which cannot be perceived with the five senses, right? And we can, for example, even bring in the energy of past lives. So if I'm talking to another person who probably have a past life connection with me, those energies also get carried into the present moment, although we may not be very much conscious of it. Right? So that's why I find like conversations very interesting, and especially when you are able to tune into the multidimensional aspects of it, even as you speak, some of us can see, hear, beyond the words, then it becomes fascinating what, the actual exchange is between the two people. Right. So it's way more than words, is what I want to emphasize here. So coming back to the alchemical nature of or the potential of conversations. So I was reflecting on what actually makes it transformational, transmutational, and healing. It all actually depends, I believe, on the energy or the energetic body that we carry into the conversation. Okay. So for example, if I'm carrying a lot of unsafety and unprocessed emotions, unhealed wounds, untransmuted shadows, and things like that. So it's very much likely that I'll project that energy into the other person and the conversation itself. And, the other person also, depending on what they are carrying, they can project it to me, right? So if both of us are carrying such energies, of course, it's going to be a very difficult conversation, I'm sure. And of course, I have encountered such conversations in my life as well. So such conversations, as I mentioned earlier, can be alchemized into something healing if the right resources, the knowledge, the wisdom exist between these two people, or if at least one person carries that, energy. But usually what happens is then it can turn into something very painful, disharmonious, and misaligned, right? So that won't be a very healing experience at that moment in that particular conversation, right? It's likely to create more wounding and perpetuate the existing wounds. So this is why I believe that it's really important to do the inner work and be equipped with the right tools to be able to navigate conversations, our experience, our relational experience in conversations, and be able to alchemize the content of the conversation into something really profound and healing, right? And it is very much possible in my experience. But if, on the other hand, if we are carrying very positive energies and our own wisdom, and having done our own inner work, and if we know how to hold space, these are all skills that we all can, build within us. And if we carry very positive and pure intentions and a lot of compassion in our hearts, a lot of love, then there's huge potential for healing to take place, through such exchanges, right? So I will give you some examples a little bit later. So I would invite you to actually go back and visit one of the videos that I did last year on compassionate communication, where I'm sharing a few different steps for you to be able to filter out what needs to be communicated and what does not need to be communicated for the highest good of all when we are speaking our truth. Basically how to speak our truth with compassion. So I'm sure that will help you, in engaging in these kind of alchemical conversations, which result in healing for everybody engaging in the conversation, right? And it's not always necessary that all the people in the conversation are even, aware or have that kind of expanded consciousness or the tools and the resources, but even at least one person has that ability to hold the space and embodies those energies that I was speaking of. This kind of alchemy and healing and transformation is very much possible. And it doesn't always have to be in a therapeutic setting as well. It can definitely happen outside, in casual conversations with friends, family, whoever, right? Even, strangers. So, I will just share some of my experiences. So most of it, where I felt the alchemy outside of, therapeutic conversations, of course, with some of my good intimate friends, of course, now to think like, most of them are healers themselves. So, there is that compatibility and the capacity. But I'm sure all of you would have experienced at least, one interaction or one friendship where you can talk from dawn till dusk and, not feel tired, and you feel, very uplifted and, um, joyful, basically. If at all after a particular conversation you feel joyful and hopeful or excited and uplifted, and as if the burden that you are carrying have been lessened in some way and some kind of transmutation has taken place, you can be sure that there is that alchemy at work, right? Whether you are conscious of it or not, right? And I think, like, most of us are blessed with these kind of friendships, that, that kind of friend you can always reach out, when you are faced with some kind of a problem or, moving through very painful times in your life. Or like, as one of my friends would say, the 1 a.m. friend, you can just talk to about anything and everything, without feeling judged, and I think, yeah, that's another very important aspect and an attribute of alchemical conversations is when you are able to really be seen in your deepest vulnerability, without feeling judged or shamed, and be fully witnessed. That is in itself truly alchemical and transformational and healing, And I do hope you have experienced this at least once in your life. And if not, I do pray that you do, right? Because I think if everybody learns how to engage in alchemical conversations very intentionally, we would need therapy much less. Although there's nothing wrong with therapy, I'm also a therapist myself, and it's a beautiful process. And when somebody's able to hold that space for you very consciously with the right skill set, it can be the most healing. So much love to all the therapists and healers out there. And something that I would actually invite all of you therapists, healers, and those who are not, we are all healers in our capacity, right? May not be professionally, but if we can, as even professional therapists and healers, incorporate more of the alchemical conversations, or the alchemy into the conversations that we have, which is something that I gradually learned to do, because as therapists, we are learned certain processes and things like that. But what I realized was like even a very organic kind of a conversation without any sort of specific tools as such can be very powerful when there is that potential or the capacity to alchemize the conversations. And another indicator of the alchemy taking place, apart from the upliftment and joy and all of those things that I mentioned, is if that conversation actually makes you cry, in the sense of not out of pain, but due to the healing impact of it, when it helps you release, what has been stuck or stagnating in your heart. And, you can think about, such conversations you may have had with anybody in your life, And sometimes there are those people, even in their presence, you feel like crying, because of the release, because it's so healing, because you feel so safe to be vulnerable, to express your deepest truths and your deepest pains, right? So that quality, I would say, is that capacity and the space the conversation holds for catharsis, right? So alchemical conversations can often result in catharsis in some way, shape, or form. And I've seen it happen, to others also in my presence in our conversations, and it has happened to me as well, and quite unintentionally. I mean, in regular conversations, and I feel that this happens because of that embodiment, because when you have embodied that energy of unconditional love and compassion, it creates that safety, in the space of the conversation. And as I said, it's the energy that gets communicated, right? And the other person automatically feels very safe, safe enough to be vulnerable. And it brings to the surface, even very unconsciously, whatever these energies that needs to be released. And it has that very cathartic healing effect, right? And last year, like, I visit my project locations every year, like I do my own social work. Because I used to be a social worker, so I still continue some of my voluntary programs. And I visit my ground level projects, and every year I have a conversation with them, with the beneficiaries of my projects, whether they're children or parents, adults, whoever. So I try to kind of engage with them and offer them whatever that I can to help them expand their consciousness. So usually I love to have these alchemical conversations with them. So this time also I gathered a group of them. We had this conversation in a small little room in a government office, and There were about 20, 25 people. And I didn't even have the intention of doing any healing or any such thing. I just wanted to um, initiate a conversation on the subject of metaphysics because these kind of subjects are not often easily accessible to people on the ground, in my country, here in Sri Lanka, especially in the vernacular. So I just wanted to have a kind of like an introductory program for them on what is metaphysics and energy healing, something very basic. And so I was just having this conversation with them. And there was one lady there who had attended who I have not even met before. And she's not exactly a part of my, current projects, although I think she may have uh, benefited some time earlier. But anyhow, basically, the point is she was not even supposed to be there, but she had heard, from my colleague that I'm having this program. So she was interested. So this is also like, how our soul or, the divine or whatever you want to call it, takes us to exactly where we need to be at the right time in divine timing, right? And so she, as she said later, she didn't even think that she could make it to the program, but something was drawing her, like, pulling her and towards this program. And she felt this urge to somehow attend, and somehow she made it, despite all the challenges and all. So that's because, she was meant to be there for this particular healing to take place. So what happened was we were just having this conversation, and in the midst of which she just started crying, you know, just started crying like that. And everything that she has kept bottled up inside of her since months, ever since her husband had passed, just started coming out just like that, like it was like a flood. And all of us were able to hold space for her as this catharsis was happening within her. And she, as she herself explained it, she was just listening to what we were talking about, and that had brought up, certain emotions within her that she had not been able to express up until that moment. So for some reason she felt that safe, that space was safe, and that she could actually express herself, and that I would be able to hold space for her, like, although she was not very conscious of it, and yeah, all I had to do was to just hold space for all that, emotion to come up, and she found it a very cathartic and healing experience. So that was a beautiful experience for me as to how healing can be so spontaneous. It doesn't always necessarily have to happen within a therapeutic environment or in a therapy room. It can happen in the midst of, like, 100 people, where you're talking about anything, if the right conditions are there. And of course, if uh, there's someone who embodies that healing energy and is able to hold space with a lot of compassion. Right? And, if each of us actually learns how to do this, how to hold space for each other's emotions, and without any judgment and with compassion, most of our conversations can be truly alchemical, and our lives would be, a really beautiful healing space for all of us, right? So that was one beautiful experience that I had which proved to me the impact of alchemical conversations, and that uh, healing can happen anywhere, in any way. As for myself, like, a few months ago, I was having this conversation with a beautiful new friend of mine who's much senior to me. And we were just once again in a cafe having just, we were just getting to know each other, actually. But she also holds like a very beautiful energy of, uh, compassion and love and wisdom and solidity, um, and so much more, So she has a very grounding presence to her. And in that presence, I felt like, there is this softening within me. And she just asked me one question, about my mother. And I felt all these, tears coming up, and a lot of uh, pain that I'm still holding deep inside of me, wanting to be expressed, right? So, and thereafter, like the subsequent events, really paved the way for me to start working with some of my deeper wounds, and which I found very, very transformational. And the work goes on. Of course, we are all work in progress. But what I wanted to talk to you today is like, how impactful and healing and alchemical conversations can be, um, if we know how to uh, turn these conversations into alchemical conversations, right? So I hope this helps you reflect a little bit more on your conversations and become a little bit more conscious and intentional whenever you are engaging with another person through conversation, right? To see like, what are the words we are exchanging, and what's the kind of energy that we are imbuing into these words, what intention beneath or behind these words, and how can we really turn each and every word and syllable into something of healing and love and compassion. So words are free. So we can do so much goodness and initiate so much healing and transformation with our words. So my prayer for you today is that may our words be truly healing. May your words carry your wisdom and love through the frequency of your words into the hearts of every person that you converse with. So thank you so much, beautiful souls, for joining me today. And if you like this conversation, because for me, every conversation with you is an alchemical conversation. And I do hope that our conversations create that alchemy and transformation in your lives as well. So if you feel that happened, please feel free to like and subscribe and share. Until we meet again next week, have a beautiful week and a year ahead. Bye for now.